Meet AEL 4.0, the Automated Educational Liaison Mark IV. Your AEL unit is guaranteed to meet all educational needs in the realms of science, technology, engineering, and math. New improvements to the AEL subsystems now may reduce risks of critical failure due to unintentional paradoxes.
Okay, AEL, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
AEL is the new and improved choice for all higher learning institutions in the new contemporary era. So why not invest in the future and try out the AEL Mark IV free for 90 days? If you are not completely satisfied, you can return to the AEL unit for a full 10% refund.
Please note, the Automated Educational Liaison units are intended solely for use within institutions of scientific and mathematical-based learning. Usage outside of the intended parameters may result in unexpected results.
Ah, yes, the majesty and reflective hush of the Art Museum, with its long and storied history. Today, many people visit these institutions of fine learning, and you, as students of the arts, should be aware of the many fundamental features found within. Oh, hello there, little fellow. You're an AEL unit, aren't you? What is an AEL unit doing in an art museum? You're working. Well, yes, I can see that, little guy. It's just that AEL units weren't designed for the arts, but rather for the sciences. I apologize, I didn't mean any offense. I suppose you're quite handy when it comes to odd tasks around the museum. You say what now? You downloaded the elements of art, the principles of design, all the color rules ever made, and you made a catalog of various patterns commonly found in cultures around the world. Well, that is quite impressive. But there is still much more to understanding art than simply analyzing the surface details of a work. Perhaps it is best if we forgo the tour and help our little AEL unit here to better understand the ins and outs of art. But before we do, I think we can give him a name. I got it. How about Al for short? All right, Al, let's get started. You see, Al here was designed to work in the fields of science and mathematics, meaning that he is very good at logic, but not very good at more abstract subjects like the arts. There is, however, logic in the arts, and I think that we can help him by using this method of thinking. Let us begin by explaining how to look at, understand, and discuss art in a logical manner that provides insight to those we are discussing art with. As Al has already deduced, there are certain aspects of art that are consistent and easily identifiable. These are the formal elements of an artwork. You see, Al, these formal aspects are but one part of a more complex equation that makes up great art. Artwork is in many ways like a formula, the various pieces coming together to form a solution. The main difference is that this solution might be interpreted differently by various people. We can think of looking at art like creating a cause and effect statement. In art, the cause is the way in which the formal elements are put together. Like in math, these elements are put together via a series of rules. The effect of putting together these formal elements, according to these rules, is the same as adding up numbers and expecting a solution. Do you see the similarities? Good. Now, like with math, if we combine all these elements together, following the rules that govern the principles of design, we end up with an effect. See, it's logical. If there is a cause, then there must be an effect, and vice versa. In the case of our art equation, the result of adding together elements results in the various principles of design. You see, just like the numbers adding together to make bigger numbers, elements are added together to make more sophisticated principles within art. Like with math, these bigger principles then combine to make other outcomes, much larger than the original sum. Or we can think of it as a chain of cause and effect. Because the artist combined the formal elements in various ways, the effect was that their artwork is comprised of various principles of design. Logically, we must next ask what the effects are of these combined principles. And the answer to that is a bunch of things. Sorry, Al. This is where art becomes a little less logical. You see, we can predict various outcomes, but there are no right or wrong answers in art. Just justifiable outcomes that correlate with logical deduction. Think of yourself as a robotic Sherlock Holmes. When we combine the principles of design, we get other greater effects, or greater significance as an outcome. These can be a wide range of things, such as these. You see, to fully and properly analyze an artwork, we need to use cause and effect statements. By understanding both why we get the outcome and what causes the outcome, we can then draw conclusions about the artist's intent and why artworks are successful in various ways. The same goes for when we create our own art. Does that make sense? Let's try to analyze a work together. That will help you to better understand what I am talking about. To keep you from getting overwhelmed, let's start with something very simple that has a lot of hidden meaning. Look at this work, created in 1994 by the famed artist Michael Tuffery. It is titled Pusupu Lua Afe, or Corned Beef 2000. First, we must determine the cause in our cause statement. At this early stage in the analysis, this will simply be to identify all the formal elements within the piece. So let's start with that first. The most obvious is that Tuffery's bull is made from recycled and flattened corned beef cans. The bull figure is three-dimensional, meaning that it inherently has form. The cans are riveted together and overlap one another to create that form. The cans' printed colors are yellow and red, and these show throughout the bull with the exception of areas that are meant to be shaded lighter, in which cases the artist has used the metallic and white portions of the cans. Also, there's a natural texture that occurs due to the bull's construction. We also see that the print of the cans has a linear stripe in its design. This collection of surface details is the cause part of our initial cause and effect statement. Now we need to look at the effect of these formal elements all put together. Well, looking at our list and at the sculpture, we notice a few things. The work is, of course, three-dimensional. That paired with the high contrast nature of the colors makes the bull immediately stand out. The construction method that combines overlapping cans and rivets also gives the bull a sense of rhythm and pattern, along with a natural texture. The linear design of the corned beef label is also interesting, as it emphasizes the formal qualities of the bull, bringing attention to the curves and girth of the bull's frame. Finally, the bull has an overall sense of unity due to its singular construction material, while maintaining a visual variety that is engaging due to the segmentation of the previously mentioned repeating visual patterns. With that, we had the minimal cause and effects that make up Corned Beef 2000. You see, without the effect statement, we only describe what we see, and we do not really analyze it. It is important to make this distinction, as the analysis of art is the main goal. Describing it tells us very little, though it is likely that you will have a hard time maintaining a fully formal analysis of a piece without immediately drawing at least some forward-thinking conclusions about the work. Whoa there! Ow, hold up, buddy. The worst kind of analysis is a drive-by. You can't just speed through your analysis, or you miss the good stuff. Artwork isn't just about the surface details and simple conclusions. Artwork has a lot to tell us, but you must listen. Art needs your undivided attention and time to fully understand all it has to say.
Artwork must be examined from far away, from different angles, down below, up close, the depth of the canvas of sculpture, and so on. Get a sense of its scale. Look at it. Memorize it. Look at it over the course of a few days. Keep coming back to it. Whatever it takes.
See what I mean? You must give artwork the time and attention it deserves. And it can tell you a lot about the world and about ourselves. Let's go back to that Tuffery piece for another look. We know the effects of the formal elements, but what do the principles we describe tell us about what Tuffery is actually saying with this piece? The answer may be surprising, and that is good. The answers that art gives are quite often surprising to both us and to those we're analyzing the works for. And those surprising thoughts are far more interesting than simply telling people facts that they can see for themselves. The answer to our question about Tuffery's work is much deeper than one might assume by simply looking at the work's surface. This, however, requires that we do some research. You see, when analyzing art, everything in our lives, all our accumulated knowledge, helps us to further our understanding of artworks. In addition, it often takes additional research to better understand the intent and meaning behind complex works of art. We must combine our life experience and knowledge with historical fact and the knowledge that is available about both the artist and the artwork to make fully informed conclusions. Let's begin our further analysis of Pusupu Lua Afe by further researching about Tuffery. Tuffery, as one may surmise from the title of his work, is a contemporary artist who has strong ties to Samoan culture, along with other areas in the Pacific Islands, including his home in New Zealand. But we must ask ourselves, what is Tuffery trying to tell us about his heritage in relation to this sculpture? Well, our initial thought may be to analyze this work in terms of pop culture and kit culture. Looking at it from this perspective, we might draw the conclusion that Tuffery is raising questions about what constitutes his art. There has long been a debate about academic art versus kitsch art. One may also draw the conclusion that there is a correlation between the canned corned beef used in his sculpture and the works of artists like Andy Warhol, who, during the pop art movement, used popular culture and consumables as a launching point about discussions regarding American culture and consumerism. Both of these lines of thought are logically sound, but only partially relevant. One could assume that the design of Tuffrey's bull may be in some way symbolic of traditional island arts and crafts. However, this is really a minimal point, and not at the core of the work's intent. Of more relevance is the connection with Warhol. Tuffrey is clearly connecting the Samoan and Pacific Island culture with the cans of corned beef used in the bull's construction. And the bull is clearly representative of the product itself. So what is he really trying to say about the culture? Is it simply a reimagining of Warhol's soup cans based on Pacific Island culture? The answer is no. Upon doing research, we can confirm the connection Tuffrey is making between the products and Pacific Island culture in two ways. The first is that the word pusupo is a derivative of the Samoan language meaning pea soup. However, this is now used in the Pacific Islands as a term for any canned food. Further research tells us these canned foods play an important part in the culture of the Pacific Islands, going so far as to becoming part of the primary gifts given at large celebrations. So we see here that the connection is cultural, but what is the more significant message? Well, looking at the bull again, we can clearly see that the construction gives the bull a steadfast and sturdy appearance. It has an almost armored and impenetrable feeling to it. In addition, those colors, the bright reds and yellows, feel fairly familiar to us with simple and quick sources of food. The reason for this is because red and yellow are commonly used in advertising, especially in fast food chains here in America. The colors are intense, highly saturated, and immediately eye-catching. Speaking of eye-catching, the bull itself is eye-catching. It uses shiny metallic sections on it. It's kitschy and whimsical, and clearly meant to feel fun and engaging. With that in mind, and a bit more research, what can be determined? Well, as we mentioned, the colors are reminiscent of fast food here in America, and corned beef and other canned foods come from the same background of food quality. Canned meats like Spam and corned beef are meant to be fast and convenient alternatives to fresh food. They are high in fat and sodium, and generally choices that lead to poor health, though. Now think back to the significance of these canned foods in Samoan culture. Tuffrey is telling us that the Samoan culture is killing themselves through the mass consumption of these foods. He is making a statement about the health of these cultures as a result of this type of consumerism. Why then is the sculpture bright and fun? Simple. The sculpture is meant to grab the attention of children in the same way that the fast food restaurants do. Only Tuffrey is doing so in order to educate them. We can further this analysis by considering that Tuffrey is making the work from recycled cans. What then could this imply? Like all good art, this is not a coincidence either. Tuffrey is bringing to light the environmental issues surrounding these canned foods. Obviously, there are issues with waste disposal with these sources of canned food. We must remember that the reference here is the Pacific Islands, which, like any other island, is limited in space. Doing some research, we also realized that, like we assumed early on, there's a connection between the reuse of the cans to make upcycled items. It turns out that this upcycling is more prevalent than recycling in the islands, though not nearly as effective. Further digging reveals another impact of this type of food, and that is the impact of cattle and other domesticated animals on the ecosystems in the islands. So you see, there is much more to this sculpture than we first might assume. This is a simple piece. The more complex the work, the more complex your analysis might become. So it is important that you take the time and listen to what the artwork you are analyzing has to say to you. What do you think, Al? Do you have a better understanding of how to analyze artwork now? Oh, I see you're writing your first analysis. Excellent. Just remember, though, that there are a few tools that exist now that can help your efforts. The first is that now we have access to a world of digital information. This access didn't exist before. This also means that we can study any work of art regardless of where we are in the world. Well, you were lucky, Al, because you can see these works up close in your museum. Don't forget that you can also analyze art via picture. However, you must consider pictures' limitations when analyzing works. What limitations? Well, look at this work here. What you can't see is how big that work is. Now let's compare it in real size compared to you. Does that make a difference in the way you think about the work? Exactly. So while a picture told us a lot, it didn't tell us everything. Knowing this, we need to gather as much visual information as possible. That means that we need images that show scale and surface details. Sometimes getting close to a work and seeing the details reveals hidden clues about how the piece was made. These details can alter our understanding of the works greatly, and missing out on these aspects can limit the effectiveness of our analyses. Of course, there are times when our information is limited, and in such cases, it is best to only make assumptions based upon the knowledge we have and the research we can conduct. Discussing aspects that we are not certain of will only lower the validity of our logical assumptions and render our analyses useless to others. A great way to work around this is to research videos about the artwork you were looking at. In these cases, there's a better chance that you will learn more about the work than simply seeing it in a static shot, as videos are commonly shot with varying angles and details to add more to their narrative quality. Speaking of video, don't simply settle on writing about your works. Video is a great contemporary outlet for artwork analysis and can add a great deal of depth to your conversation about your ideas. I see you found an analysis video in your databanks. Oh dear, I think we have drained your battery out. Perhaps it is best to rest up, practice some more on your own. I'm sure I will see you again soon. Maybe we can talk more about art when we meet again. All right, Al. Have a good night.